On today's podcast, we have Dame Katherine Grainger. Katherine's a former Scottish rower and the current chair of UK sport. She's competed at a record 5 Olympic Games. She won an incredible gold medal race in the London 2012 Olympic Games, and she's a 4-time Olympic silver medalist and 6-time world champion. At the London Olympics in 2012, Katherine and her incredible teammate, Anna Watkins, smashed the Olympic record as they qualified for the final, where they ultimately won gold for Team GB. Not just an incredible athlete, Katherine holds a Bachelor of Law from the University of Edinburgh, a Master of Philosophy in Medical Law and Medical Ethics from the University of Glasgow, and a Doctor of Philosophy in Law from King's College London. In April 2017, Katherine was appointed Chair of UK Sport and then reappointed for a second term in July 2021. She's currently leading that charge for Team GB into the Paris Olympics. Katherine was appointed Dame Commander of the Order of the British Empire, DBE, in the 2017 New Year Honours for services to sport and charity. In this episode, we discuss the magic that was the London Olympics, the journey from novice to expert, and the powerful role your teammates will play in your success. I hope you enjoy. Dame Katherine Grainger, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, James. Absolute joy to be here with you.
I've been really looking forward to chatting with you today. As some of the listeners know, I spent a lot of my time studying at Edinburgh, and I spent a lot of that time in the gym. And in the gym, there are murals of yourself, Sir Chris Hoy, Eric Liddell. So this is a conversation I've been particularly excited about having.
I am only going to apologise for me looming over you when you've been trying to do some workout sessions in that gym, because yeah, you've got some lovely big pictures of all of us around those walls.
It's a fantastic gym. So, Katherine, where did it all begin for you?
Oh, what a question. So I grew up in Glasgow, and I mean, really happy, quite simple childhood. You know, one big sister, parents both teachers, and I always wanted to go to university. I always wanted to sort of, study, and education was a really big part of my influence, probably through my parents, and the opportunities it gives you, and not just from the studying point of view, but all those incredible things you can do at university is just a special time. So I decided to go and study, and I was going to do law, because at that point my future was going to be being a lawyer. I was massively influenced, probably in watching far too many courtroom dramas on TV and reading about them and thinking it sounds, I don't know, there's great closing speeches where you can change the world in through the power of word. And I thought, that's what I'll go and study. And then I went through to Edinburgh University to study. And I think within a few lectures you realise it's not all glamour that you have to study in law. But I still enjoyed a lot of the subjects. But when I was there, I went to the inevitable Freshers' Week fair, which everyone goes to, and suddenly you find out all these clubs and societies and organisations on things you've never heard of before. All these crazy clubs that I joined in that enthusiastic first week, and one of them was the rowing club, and I had no plans to join it, to be honest. I joined it because one of my other friends was joining, and they gave a very good chat about all the great things you could do through sport, and it was a very social club as well, and it was a great way to meet people and all these sort of things. And I went along, and initially, I'll be honest, it wasn't the sport itself that hooked me. It was the people, it was the environment. There was brilliant characters, brilliant friendships. It was quite an intense sport of training, even at a novice level. So you got really great people who were just grafters, just hard work, but also, really enjoyed the play side as well. And I loved that environment. And I still at that point thought I was still going to be a lawyer, but it's quite nice to do this rowing malarkey while I'm studying. And I found a really nice balance. I found actually this sort of study and sport incredibly complementary. And I was at Edinburgh for 4 years doing my undergrad. And each year I sort of got a bit more serious in the rowing side. And I'd probably, like a lot of people, had a couple of incredible coaches along the time who just, at the right time and the right way, made the right level of suggestion to kind of give me a sense of my potential or ambition, or just fed the thought of what if you took it to the next level. And then in my final year, I was at Edinburgh, I had a brilliant coach there as well called Hamish, and one day I was on the rowing machine in the gym that you've spent time in, and he sort of said very casually, do you think you should maybe think about going to the British national trials? And I remember at the time thinking, there's absolutely no way that, that is for the best people in the country. That's some of the best people in the world will be competing there, and I'm nowhere near that. And he was really good at just saying, well, let's give it a few days, have a think, we'll discuss it next week. But at the end of the day, you've got nothing to lose. And, and also the real message was, well, they're not looking to, you don't need to be the finished article at that point. You just need to show something that they'll be interested in, some potential, either physically or, tactically or mentally or emotionally, or something that shows you, you've got the basic, some of the building blocks needed to be successful. So yeah, I duly went along to the trials, and after those trials was invited to be part of the British team, and then spent the next over 20 years being part of the British rowing team and going to a range of Olympic Games. So it was just one of those amazing opportunities. It wasn't really what I'd been aiming for, planning to do, or thinking I could do. And the right people at the right time made the right suggestions, and then you grab those moments when they come.
Absolutely. And in terms of your first exposure to rowing, was there an instant like, wow, I've got a high baseline here. This is a high baseline ability, and I'm super
Uh,
responsive to training, or was it a combination of the two? Or
so when I went along to university, I always loved sport at school, but I was very much, did a bit of everything, like loved lots of different sports. And I did martial arts, actually. It was the last thing I did at school. And I'd got my black belt in karate. So I sort of thought that's what I would do. And when I moved across to rowing, I took a lot of those skills and learnings, I guess, across into rowing with me, which is very helpful. Uh, and I think as a novice in my first year, I was a very good novice. We had a very good group of women who were brilliant. We did very successful as a novice team. And then I got a little bit overconfident, inevitably, and went into my first year as a senior, so the second year at university. And I made these sort of assumptions that because I'd been a great novice, that, well, now I was ready to be a great senior and I had all the skills I needed. And I got a very harsh reality check on sort of within about 2 weeks of term when we did all these trials, and I came out somewhere near the bottom of them all. So I suddenly realized, gosh, I could be a very good novice, but actually the next level is in every way a different sort of league. And I had this moment where I had to decide, is it going to be what I want to do, or is it going to be something I walk away from? And if I need to do it or want to do it, then it's going to have to be a different way of tackling it. And yeah, it was a very chastening but valuable experience quite early on in my career.
I can imagine. And then in terms of, were the GB trials the moment that you sort of realized like, hey, I might have something really special here? Or when did that moment
Yeah, to some
rise?
extent. I think so I went down with one of the other girls from university, and we were both selected together to go to a sort of British training camp. So I remember thinking, wow, that's more than I expected, and that this could be exciting. But there were still, I mean, in a wonderful way, everyone around me was better. Everyone were more experienced and sort of had been around longer and had been more competitive, and some of them had been to the Olympics already. And so although I'd sort of got my foot in the door and I thought, okay, this is exciting potential, it still felt, but there's a long way to go yet. But I think just being in that environment, being around, some of the superstars of our sport were on the team at the time, and you saw, I mean, there was quite a gulf between where I was and where I wanted to get to, but you saw how it could be done. You saw what it took to get there. You saw all these things around you every day, and so it's like it's that wonderful time when you're just a complete sponge, and every day you learn, and every training session there's something you can improve on. So I sort of felt, okay, I've got, I've got again, it's an opportunity. I've got an opportunity to do this, and I've got the right people around me to get me there. But it's gonna take a lot to get to that level. But I think the first time you sort of get invited in to that world, you think, okay, maybe I've got something I could bring to this party.
Absolutely. And am I correct in saying at that point in time, I think British female rowing, there weren't any medal successes to date, were there?
No, so in my final year was the year I was sort of did the trials and was invited in, and the first race that we went to internationally, I was in a pair with another girl who was at Cambridge University. So we came together, not having sort of trained or rowed together before. We just sort of met at these final trials and were put in a pair together. Slightly because some of the other boats were already sort of selected and fixed, and we were kind of leftovers to some extent, and we were unknowns. So we hadn't rowed together, we hadn't met, but we came together at trials and did very well at trials. So we were left in a pair together to go to the under-23 World Championships. And at that point, there'd been no sort of medals won by women on any level, sort of junior or international. And it was, it was a sort of building time for the women's team. There'd been huge success on the men's side, but the women hadn't quite achieved that same level. And that first event we went to, we were unknowns, both within our own team, but across the opposition as well. And we won the event, and it was a bit of a shock to everyone. It wasn't a huge shock to us. We did think we were rowing well and we knew we could race well, but we didn't really have any expectations on us, even for ourselves. So it's wonderful, joyous moment where you kind of had this incredible achievement. And we went onto the podium, and we didn't even know where we went to get to the podium, but we were directed to the podium. We hadn't really planned that part. And then got on the top step, and they did this big drum roll, and rather than playing the national anthem, they played Queen, We Are the Champions. So that was my first anthem I experienced, which was quite special. And then I think for us, what was lovely is if you come in not having had a history of maybe not quite making it, we just came in and thought, first race, we can win it. And we did. And therefore, we got this incredible sort of bounce. And then we went to a World Championships, the Senior World Championships that same summer. We were then selected to join a boat there. And that was the sort of first World Championships where the women started really succeeding on the world stage. And so it was an amazing time to be part of that team where there'd sort of been nothing had gone before really, and suddenly you sort of saw the team coming together and actually performing at the top level. And when you're in an environment where a lot of people are doing well within it, it lifts everyone. There's a sense of we can do that too. So yeah, it started to change really from that point onwards.
And at this point in time, so you've just had this incredible result at the under-23s. Are you still considering a career in law, or are you like, my heart is set on Olympic medals, or where are you at in that respect?
Yeah, so that was the summer I graduated. So I remember sitting with my mum and dad and saying, I still love law. I got my degree, which is a positive. And I actually wanted to do a master's at that point. I still enjoyed the subject matter and the studying, but I want to do the master's sort of part-time, kind of alongside or in the background. The main thing I want to do is I want to try this rowing thing, and I want to give it a go. And my mum and dad, like I said, were teachers. They weren't sporting background at all. So it was an unusual and unexpected choice for them to hear. And they were, oh my goodness, they were absolutely amazing at listening carefully and hearing why I wanted to do it and what it would involve, and then sort of saying, do you know what, absolutely, give it a go, and we'll be here for you. And if it works, fantastic. And if it doesn't work, we will be here to support and make be with you in the next steps, whatever you want to do next. And so that sort of parental encouragement, support, was very much the sort of carpe diem. My mum would always do the kind of seize the day moment of, yeah, why not give it a go? And it was it came out of the blue a little bit for them, but they had seen obviously the success that summer and thought, well, let's follow it through and see what we can do.
Yeah, and then what was the time frame between? Could you talk us through that? From there to an Olympic Games, because that's another huge leap, right?
It was huge. So I stayed up. So I was still studying. So I then did my master's at Glasgow University, but I lived in Edinburgh City, and because that's where my coach was and my sort of rowing setup was. And I had 3 years. The 3 years leading up to the first Olympic Games I went to. But the main base for the team was in the southeast of England, so just outside of London. So I sort of travelled up and down when I could and when I needed to, and joined training camps. But I'd gone from this amazing, successful summer, the first year I did it, to the next summer, winning trials and sort of being selected in a boat, and then going to a couple of internationals, and it not going quite as well. And then being told I'd need to change boats to go to the team. And it was the first time. It wasn't big politics, but it was sort of it just got a bit difficult, and I ended up not going to the World Championships that summer. So I kind of went from this amazing high my first summer of everything's easy and everything's possible and everything's wonderful, to the next summer, the reality check of actually it can be quite difficult, and it can be kind of forces can move around you which make things hard to do. And then the next year, I went through the trial system again. And at that point, they said, look, we want to put together a boat that will try and qualify for the Olympic Games. You qualify 1 year out. And if you're part of that boat, you will need to be, with the other athletes on the same bit of river in the same town, and you will need to kind of move your life there. And I remember being told that on a Thursday evening after trials, and them saying, okay, on the Monday it'll start on the River Thames, and that's your choice. And it's, there was no pressure either way, but it's very much, we want you and we'd like you, but you need to. My original coach from Edinburgh, who I sort of said, what do you think I should do? And he said, look, this is the door opening for you now. If you really want to do it, you walk through it at this point, and you don't worry. He was going to stay in Edinburgh. You walk away, and I'll always support you from afar, but this is your moment. And I remember speaking to my big sister sort of on the Friday and saying, I think I'm going to make this move down to London. And she was in Aberdeen at the time, so she came down at the weekend. We hired a white van. I packed up my student flat that I lived in at the time, and then moved down. And on Monday morning, I was rowing in a boat, and that was the move. And I remember having my really good friends from Edinburgh, calling me up on the Tuesday, Wednesday that week saying, oh, we're out to the cinema tonight, or going out for a drink. Do you want to meet? And I was thinking, I don't live there anymore. My whole life has moved almost overnight. So it was a big shift. But at that point, then you are part of the national squad. And then that was a year out from my first Olympic Games. And we qualified the boat that summer. And then the next year was all about going to the Olympics.
That must have been an incredible feeling, the reward for that commitment.
Yeah, it is. And if you're an Olympic or Paralympic sport, that once every 4 years, massively international multi-sport event that is the craziness of the Olympic Games is your absolute, it is the beacon that calls you. It is everything. You might have world championships and European championships and World Cups in between, but it's the Olympic Games that you really aim for. It is such a unique, kind of thrilling, traditional, historic, kind of incredible coming together of sport, and it's the one you want to be at.
Of course. And in terms of that opportunity to compete at the pinnacle, how did that start to shift your perceptions of your own potential or your approach to training?
I think when you've been selected at that level, you realize now it's not that it's suddenly become serious, but it matters, and it's important, to you. And I think the wonderful thing about I've always loved team sport as well, because you get this incredible sense of responsibility, to each other and for each other. And there was the real sense of, almost the team's on the rise. The women's team was really starting to perform, and these opportunities don't come around very often, especially if you're talking Olympics. It's once every 4 years, and there's so many things that can go wrong. So what you need to do is everything that is in your control and in your power, you need to absolutely try and, make the best of those. So whether it's training or, nutrition or rest and recovery, or, physical, or the sort of mental and the emotional side, all these different factors, the more you do, the more you realize there is to do. And in a way that's thrilling, because suddenly you think, it's not just about sitting in a boat and rowing fast for 2,000 meters. Actually, to get to the point you can do that, you suddenly have all these other areas open up, and you think, oh, if you can become excellent in a few of them, or ideally all of them, suddenly, your confidence and your ability just grows exponentially. So there's this really amazing opportunity when you see, there's all these things I could improve on. There's all these things I could do. I haven't been the best in some of these areas, and therefore if I improve in those areas, I'm going to be a better and better athlete. So it becomes quite there's something wonderful. It's why athletes like me stay in for a very long time, because there's always something more you could do. There's always something better you could be. And even if you're starting to achieve and winning, there's still a sense of, but I could be better again. And that's that motivation and momentum is really exciting to be part of.
And then, of course, the competing itself at an Olympic Games. Could you talk us through what does that look like and feel like, that lead up? It must be one of the most incredible feelings there is.
Oh, it absolutely is. I mean, yeah, I can't help but smile when I think about it again, and miss it in a huge way because it's so special. But yeah, I mean, it is. It's the culmination. It's the true test. It really is the test of you as an athlete because every nation, it will be the Olympic Games they will be focusing on. So you meet the best of the best globally, and they come together in this huge event. I mean, an absolutely vast event that is slightly iconic in sport. And the first time you get the kit, the first time you get, you're wearing the flag is on your t-shirt and you've got the Olympic rings next to it. And I just think if you like sport or have watched sport, even if you don't do it, you often have seen these moments in history and you think there's incredible legends. I mean, overuse that word sometimes, but the real legends of sport have been there and done it on that field. And
Absolutely.
you think the opportunity to add your little bit of history to that incredible I mean, I was lucky enough, I've competed in the Athens Olympics, which was my second Olympics. And the wonderful thing that Athens did as a host nation was to effectively say to the athletes, welcome home. This is, the ancient Olympics started in Greece and the modern Olympics started in Greece. And there's this incredible sense of centuries have gone before that had the same very simple event of, people around the world coming together to try and see who could be the best and bring these amazing competitions to life in front of amazing, stands, stadiums, the public as well. So I think leading up to it, you kind of, and every athlete's different, but you try and use all of that in a positive way because sometimes it can be overwhelming. Sometimes you need to almost pull back a little bit from it and not have this the sense of, I don't know, responsibility and scale can sometimes be just too much. And I know athletes who have really struggled with it and it's not brought out the best in them. Or if you know yourself well, I mean, one of the best things about being an athlete is you get to know yourself very, very well. So what do you need? So other people, absolutely love those big moments, those incredible rare moments when, sell out crowds and noise and expectation and pressure, and actually that can bring out the best in you. So I think I I think when you're leading up to it, the most important thing is you want to put out your best performance on that one day in a 4-year cycle where you have to try and deliver your best. And finding out how you do that is part of the fun, but part of the kind of that responsibility as well. Is how do you make sure on that one day, some sports last a matter of seconds, and how do you make sure you're delivering your best in that moment?
Absolutely. 4 years work can come down to, 6 minutes, right? Roughly.
Yeah.
And that's what it's all about, right? It can be won and lost there and then. And in terms of your expectations, I mean, what's so incredible, the number of Olympic Games you've competed at. How did your expectations as an athlete shift as you iterated through those different cycles?
Yeah, it's a really good question because they do change. And I think because you've got these sort of 4-year cycles as well, expectations change, your standards change, you as a person changes. You sort of grow up. Well, I certainly grew up through that time. So to me, I was very lucky. I did 5 Olympic Games, and in each one, they feel so unique and so different. And that's partly, different country, different continent, different time in the world. And as you see time changing and how things move on across that time, but also how you change. I was very different, my fifth games than I was at my first games. And, that's an incredible thing to recognize as well. And so, I mean, a lot of my results were actually quite similar across the games, but my emotional reaction to them was very different. So, my first games in Sydney, we had the British women's rowing team had never won an Olympic medal of any colour in any rowing event in the history of the Olympic Games. So, to us, I think another wonderful thing I love about sport is it's very good at creating that vision, that goal that's going to drive you forward. It's you kind of there was 4 of us in a boat in Sydney, and we were all very clear in what we were trying to achieve and why that was important to us and what achieving that would mean for all of us individually and also to our sport. And to get on the podium was a, a really massive sort of almost impossible goal at the start of our campaign. But as I got closer, I felt if we got this absolutely right, it could be possible. And we did get on the podium and we got the silver medal. And it was, oh my goodness, that moment on the podium was absolutely extraordinary. We were, I look back now, the photos are gorgeous. It's beautiful Australian sunshine and pure blue skies, huge grins, you know, all four of us. I mean, if they'd suddenly said, "Oh, do you want the gold as well?" We'd be like, "No, we don't." You know, we are, you know, almost the joy is overwhelming and overflowing, and I couldn't take any more. So the actual colour of the medal in Sydney was totally irrelevant. It was the fact we'd done something that had never been done before, but it was, you know, we wanted to see if it was possible to say, you know, British women, you know, are at the standard. We've, you know, we kind of staked that flagpole, you know,
You
staked a
certainly
flag
did
and said,
that.
we're here. So the Sydney was huge. 4 years on, 4 years more training, 4 years more hard work, 4 years more kind of blood, sweat, and tears, as everyone knows goes into sport. And then it was the same colour of medal. And at that point, you're thinking, is that progress? Is that better? But again, there were probably more challenges than I'd experienced before leading up to those games. So actually, to be back at a podium was a huge success, and you sort of learn it's those, I don't know, it's the challenges you meet along the way that really test you the most, and the ultimate result feels like you do justice to having overcome what you need to overcome. So the second silver was still a huge sense of pride and joy, but you know, a kind of hint of the first time of what if it had been something different.
It's almost the
And then
gift and curse of human nature and hedonic adaptation, isn't it? The better you do, the higher standards and expectations get.
I know, and we're very good at moving around goalposts, aren't we? Something that we used to be really pleased with and satisfied with,
We
suddenly we're
are.
not. Because I
Yeah,
mean that's what means, that is human progress. That's, I think, one of the best things we do as a species is want to push further and do more. But my goodness, it can, you know, there's moments where you have to say it's, you know, it can, there's a darker side to that where you feel,
of
will it
course.
ever
It
be
needs to be
enough?
managed well, doesn't it?
It absolutely needs to be managed well, and you need to, you know, it is about, it's, they're all the cliches, isn't it? But you have to enjoy the journey, and you have to appreciate what the journey gives you as much as the end result, because often in sport the end result isn't entirely in your hands, and if
Absolutely.
that's all you're holding on for, then it can be an incredibly sort of disappointing time leading up to that.
Absolutely. And then I guess comes London, which was
Yes.
a huge experience, I think, for all the Brits listening. I mean, the country was just buzzing for the whole event, despite all the pessimism leading up to it. There's going to be so much traffic, nothing's going to work on time. And it just ended up becoming this absolute, I've never seen British people so happy for so long. And the news every day, people are just so much positive news. It was an incredible time to be in the UK, and we had a lovely summer as well. But like, one of my questions was going to be for you was going to be like, would you share a peak experience for us? And I don't mean to serve this one up on the plate, but surely that must have been up there.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard because, you know, like I said, each of the 5 Olympics I've done have been very special and very rewarding and enriching and joyful in their own way, in their own right. But, you know, if I'm sort of told which is your favorite, I just, you know, it's impossible to look beyond the London Olympics. You know, if you're a British athlete, well, any athlete competing in a home games is extraordinary. So for London became the first city to host it 3 times. So it's the only city that's had 3 games, until Paris has been given, obviously, the 2024 games, and that's the third games for Paris. But so London, but the previous games before 2012 was 1948. So every single, you know, Olympic or Paralympic athlete competing for Great Britain between 1949 to 2011 had never experienced a home games. So there's these decades of brilliant athletes who just never got the opportunity to have a home crowd. And so we'd sort of heard, there were some actually brilliant athletes still existing from who'd competed in 1948 who talked about it. But their experience was so different because it was immediately post-war and there was still rationing, and, you know, it was a very, very different experience. Whereas the sense of, and you're right, the build-up was incredibly negative. There was a lot of doubt and worry about everything from tickets to transport to weather. You know, there's just this, should we be hosting it? Is it worth it? Will we do a good job? And it was absolutely extraordinary. And it was far beyond even everyone who was very optimistic about it. It just blew all expectations out of the water. And I think unless you've experienced it, it's really hard to describe the scale, and exactly as you said, of, and it was the emotion. It was a city, and it was actually the whole country. It was, you know, right around the country, the whole of Great Britain felt it. It was a sense of joy, of optimism, of fun, of coming together, of being united behind something, of pride in what the country could do. The weather did play ball. Finally, the sun came out just in time. And, every day I spoke to so many people, and especially anyone who spends a lot of time in London, like any major city. It's a fast moving city. It can feel sometimes cold at times if, people are, not everyone stops to engage or talk. People are going to work, people have got things to do. I experience it all the time. And it's just a fast paced city like anywhere. And then the sort of Olympics and the Paralympics over that amazing summer happened. And suddenly everyone had time to talk to people in the streets, or, ask what event you might have seen or where you were going next, or people in the tube were incredibly supportive about, do you know where you're going? Can I give you advice? There was this sort
It's
of,
incredible. Thought the water had been
openness.
spiked with
Yeah,
something.
I know so many people were like, I didn't recognize this place. There was this just, the friendliness was off the scale. And there was just this, and I speak to people even now, it's a long time ago now, 2012, and yet, it will still bring a smile to people's faces because they suddenly remember this summer where everything felt possible and everything felt good and joyful, and there was this lovely connection between people. I think sport is this amazing gift of bringing people together, and whether it's in front of huge screens or, around families around television sets, or people going into the stadiums and seeing it live, there's this amazing, as human beings, we are a species that enjoys company and spends time together. And to experience some of those really kind of iconic sporting moments in a way that you're communal, you're together, that you can share, that you can relive, it's incredible. And I speak to lots of people who were young children at the time, and saying how influential it was and what they felt was possible. I think it just, I was very lucky. If you're an athlete at the time, you get a lot of correspondence. I got a lot of people talking to me or writing to me about their experience of those games, and so much of it was people who not necessarily from a sporting background or used it as an inspiration for sport, although there's plenty of those, but people who used it as inspiration just in their lives. Just of, I watched, because I think if you watch sport, what you see is people who are very gifted, but who are generally ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And they're doing it through a lot of hard work, through taking risks, taking chances, taking opportunities, and learning, developing, and finding their potential and sometimes their limits. And that's just a message that a lot of people felt they could take into their own
Absolutely.
lives and do stuff for
Absolutely.
themselves.
It's so powerful in that respect. And, in terms of, you competing there, I mean, what are your expectations going into that? Because at that point, you think you were unbeaten, weren't you, for
Yeah.
a long period of time going into that Olympics? I mean, was this, in your head, are you like, that gold medal is mine?
Yeah, so I was in a double with Anna Watkins. There was two of us in the boat, and again, you just think sometimes you're just very lucky in life in that we had this amazing partnership. So for the two of us as athletes to be in the same team at the right time and both at the sort of peak of our abilities was extraordinary. And we there was so much, we thought very similarly about so many things and had the same sense of fun, even when the pressure was growing and growing. There was a sense of fun. We loved what we did. We loved being in a boat together. And yet we actually came to the sort of problem solving side of sport very differently. And as very mathematical, she's PhD level math. She's brilliant at
That's handy.
analyzing things. Incredible, like just an absolute gift. I'm very different in the way I think and problem solve. And actually, we really respected the different styles. So it's that obvious thing, but incredible thing of we were both completely attuned in what we wanted to achieve and why and how, but our understanding of what it would take to get there, we brought very different strengths of how we could bring it. So actually, you suddenly realize I was in this, only two of us in a boat, and yet between us, we kind of had all the answers. And it gave us incredible confidence in the different approaches of, I had all these things covered from the way I approach things, and Anna had all the things covered from the way she approaches things. And actually, when they came together, do you know what? That's pretty unbeatable. And we were completely unbeaten. We never got beaten in any race we did. And so when it came to the London Games, the biggest thing was probably, I remember our coach talking to us and saying, you've got some very, very good opposition. There were some incredibly strong, especially Australians, and they really fancy the chances, as all good
They
Aussie
always do,
athletes
don't they?
do.
As you say.
Exactly, they do, right? they're amazing to compete against. Also quite annoying at times because they just will never roll over. They keep coming. I love their attitude. So we knew they still fancied their chances. They absolutely had said in the public, they said in the media that they wanted to come and spoil the party. They wanted to come, and we were the favourites, and they'd come to Britain in our home, ground and beat us in front of the home team. So they very publicly were saying these big statements. If anything, that just annoyed us a little bit more. And then I remember Anna and I feeling quite this amazing sense of pride and ownership of this is our not our medal at all, but this is our venue, this is our event, this is our crowd. You're coming to where we are. So you're coming to our home. So if you're going to beat us here, you would better be good. You better be really good if you really think you can come and do it here, because we're going to be at our best. And so far our best has been unbeatable. And then the biggest thing comes, and our coach was good at this, saying, even though you've got very strong opposition, your biggest opposition will probably be yourselves. Because when you sit on that start line and although you've done this race hundreds of times together and you've smashed it every single time, you've never done an Olympic final in front of a home crowd. And so there's to some extent an unpredictability about how will you cope with that level of support, that noise, that interest. It was across all the press. It was across, even when we handed in our bags before going racing, there's a sort of bag check bit. You can get rid of all your stuff before you go in the boat. And all the volunteers there, all the games makers sort of knew us because they were sort of from the rowing world. And there was a sense that they'd give you a sort of nod or a bit of there's a sort of unsaid building of pressure of people know what this race was about for us, knew what it meant, knew we were about to try and do a bit of history. And so the sense was we don't actually know how we might cope with that or if we'll cope with that. So one of the biggest challenges was, would we still sit on the start line feeling we're in the same control, the same mindset, the same ability as if we were just doing it on a quiet lake in a training camp somewhere else. So the sort of the moment itself could have been our biggest gift, because it is that home crowd feeling, or our biggest threat, and that will it tip over the wrong way and be too emotional and too stressful? And it comes out in a physical way sometimes, that stress. And actually in rowing, it's they're very fine-tuned movements and moments, and that coordination between the two of you and the rhythm, and everything can be thrown by small changes. So that was our biggest challenge, really.
And you rose to it.
We did. I'm glad you mentioned that. Yeah, we did. It's one of my favorite races. It did. Do you know what? We managed to stay we talk about being in a bubble, don't we? We're very clear to each other what we needed to do. We were going to use the crowd when it came to our advantage. You knew it was it wasn't just the volume of the crowd at the last few hundred meters, it was the passion. It was, you really got a sense of this is a home crowd. It really does feel different. And it matters to them and it mattered to us. And we knew we were going to be able to use that to lift us. And when we hit that point in the race, we were already leading, but you suddenly genuinely felt invincible. I just remember thinking, this noise is for us, and there's no way we're letting anyone past us now. And yeah, we did. And it was truly extraordinary. And even, crossed the line first, came into the podium, and you get the national anthem moment with the flag going up. And there's this moment when you see the British flag in the centre of the three flags and the national anthem starts, and you think, this is what it's about. Going back to, being a kid growing up watching this stuff on TV, everyone, all of the great people in sport have had this moment, and now this is our moment. And then you've got whatever it was, 40,000 people singing the national anthem. I mean, slightly out of tune, but this beautiful moment when you are just in the middle of this, and you just think, I will never ever forget that or ever take that for granted. That was a once in a lifetime moment. It was. I have to say, it's just I think the hardest thing with London is still, and I've talked about it a lot, because it's been many years now, and yet I still struggle to try and get the words to explain to people just what that emotion was like. I mean, it was extraordinary games, an extraordinary experience, and as an athlete, it doesn't get better. But it's still, I kind of wish I could take everyone and just put them in that moment to experience it crossing the line, because it was, yeah, truly sensational. Makes everything worthwhile. I mean, it's so hard. It's so hard to get to that point. So you just think in that moment, yeah. And I think the difference with London was it also felt hugely shared. Like, we've always got this amazing team around us. We've always got incredible, physios, nutrition, psychologists, strength and conditioning, video analysis. I mean, everyone, clearly the coaches, put in so much time and effort. So you always have that amazing team around you, and you want to find a way to make them feel as much part of the result as you as an athlete do crossing the line. So you really want to make sure everyone feels the value they've brought and how appreciated that is. But in London, you kind of magnified that out and out, and you suddenly felt, everyone in the crowd and everyone who you spoke to after that, in a wonderful way, got this amazing buzz as well. They really felt part of something special, and I think
I felt part of it just screaming at the TV. You felt like you could have an impact. That was the vibe in the country. It was. I've never seen the country like it.
Yeah. And I remember people sort of saying, oh, we couldn't be there, but we were on the tube, and they made the announcement over the tube about results coming in, and everyone cheered and supported. So again, you just feel, God, what a gift as a human to be part of something. And it was the whole
Spearheading
summer.
that.
Well, not necessarily spearheading, but even just being part of something that brought that much joy to people's lives. That's a lovely thing that you don't expect. When I started off rowing on the Edinburgh Canal, I never thought it would lead to a point where you're genuinely making an impact in the mood of a country.
Sorry to interrupt the podcast, but before we dive deeper into the conversation, I want to express how grateful I am that you're voluntarily choosing to spend your time here with us. I also want to take a moment to ask for your support. I want to bring you the best podcast I can in terms of guests, engaging discussions, and thought-provoking conversations every week. And that's where you come in. By hitting that like button and subscribing to the podcast, you play a vital role. Simply put, when you hit that like button or subscribe, you enable the podcast to reach a much wider audience. And the wider the audience, the easier it is for guests within my network to convince their agents, management teams to free up their diary and come on the show. Thank you in advance for your likes and subscriptions. Now, let's get back to business. And in the context of your career at that point in time, was the most important thing to you then winning? Because like you said, you and Anna are both coming to the peak. You're like complementary in so many ways, this incredible event. Was it just, this is about winning?
That's another one that's really hard to, again, get right, because for us, yes, in a lot of ways, it was winning in London was the goal that drove us for a very long time. But to us, it didn't feel. It almost feels kind of almost too simple, just saying we were just there to win it. Because what it was is from the moment we got on the boat together, the boat felt really special, and we knew our potential was enormous. And we were and again, you just sometimes get in teams, you think this could be something very special, very different. So I think for us, the biggest driver was maximizing the potential we had. And we knew as competitions came and went that our potential was better than anyone else. So actually, if we really maximize our potential, it would mean we would be able to win the Olympic Games. But almost the bigger driver was, I remember we sat in this beautiful boat that always felt like the third bit of our partnership on the water. And we almost felt, in a wonderful way, our responsibility is to make this boat go as fast as it can go. And we think it can be the fastest boat in the world. And if we did our jobs right, this boat would be the fastest boat on the planet. And that was that's what we had to do. That's what we should bring. That's the part we should play.
And it wasn't just a gold medal, it was an Olympic record, wasn't it?
Yeah, we broke the Olympic record in the heat. And we actually, it sounds ridiculous now, we broke it quite easily. And because Anna was making the calls in the boat, and she's this incredible analytical brain that can read a race beautifully and easily. And about halfway down the course in the heat, she knew we were going to win this race, and she wanted to make sure we conserved energy and didn't play all our cards, and you want to keep something sort of not visible if you don't need to show them all. So a combination of let's save our energy, let's not show all that we can do. So the second half of the Olympic heat, we actually took the rhythm and rating down a bit, just slowed it down, was very, very much within ourselves. And then we got to the finish, and then our coach actually said, I think that might be an Olympic record. And one, it was really unusual because Anna usually is so all over the details and the timings and knows exactly, and had completely forgotten about almost what time we might lay down because it was good conditions. And so if we'd thought about it, we could have really gone for it and really gone for a record and smashed it, but we didn't, and yet we still got it. So again, that's a confidence build of thinking, okay, if we can be the fastest Olympic boat ever done, and we didn't really go for it, then when we take it up the next level, then
Absolutely.
that gets exciting.
Yeah, I bet.
But yeah, going back to the winning thing. Yes, yeah, I think we'd have been disappointed with anything less than the Olympic gold. But it was more because we knew that's what we were capable of.
I think
So
that's such an important point you're making there, that the foundationally you're looking to maximize your own potential. And then
yeah,
if a symptom of examining that is that winning is a serious option, then that of course becomes the goal. I think that's a really healthy way to look at it.
and it takes away that slightly huge risk thing of winning at all costs. Because if winning is the only thing that
Sure.
matters, if you're not capable of winning it, you'll try and do other things to try and win, and that's just
Hmm.
bad for everyone. So I think it is once you know the potential is there, then it's a great sort of aspirational kind of driving force for you to follow through. But if it's not realistic, and not everyone it will be realistic for, then actually just maximizing your potential still gives you incredible results on
Absolutely.
that journey.
An incredible journey. And in terms of your journey, there's still a long way to go after London. I mean, where do you head out there? Because you smashed Olympic records, gold medal, home Olympics. What's going through your head at that point in time in terms of the next steps and what's most important to you moving forward?
And I think one of the big things for both Anna and myself, we noticed was we'd planned every single, as much as we could. The most common thing in sport is control the controllables. So as much as we could control, we'd planned up to the moment of crossing the line. So everything leading up to that London final when we crossed the line. And we generally hadn't put any energy into thinking what would happen one or two strokes after the line. So, as soon as that result was done, we were both in this sort of almost this brave new world of we hadn't planned for this. We didn't know what we were doing next. We didn't know what we were doing that afternoon or that night or the next day or that next week or the next month. And obviously in the sort of wonders that the Olympics brings, those next few days and weeks are sort of taken over anyway. And, even in Britain, there was, open top bus parades and there was lots happened and it seemed to go on for months. There was lots of celebrations, rightly so, because it had been such a wonderful summer. And I remember getting to about Christmas. So, summer games by Christmas time. Someone saying to me, oh, how long did it take you to come down from that incredible high? And I remember thinking, I don't think I'm down yet, actually. I was still up on this, riding this mad wave. So actually it was healthy to get into the following calendar year to just sort of say, right, 2012 is done. Now we're into a new year. And what does that mean? And I wasn't rowing at the time. Both Anna and I were taking a break, and because it was almost so much, it was quite hard to just get back to business as usual after that. So we both sort of rode that amazing wave for a while. And then my supervisor actually was the one to bring me back to earth by reminding me my PhD deadline was due. So there's nothing quite like having a very different focus and deadline to sharpen the mind and distract you from too much joy. And it was good for me. It really did bring me back to earth because it was a hard work the next 6 months to get my PhD finished and submitted in time. And I actually loved having a very different focus and completely shift
I can imagine, yeah.
emotionally. And then I did that. And then I think a lot of people around me were talking about my retirement and had assumed, and I'd never used the word retirement. It still took me many years to be comfortable with that word. And I was sort of like, instinctively I didn't feel finished, but I just knew I didn't want to be, straight back into it at that point. And I think the biggest thing when you're in this sort of, I've done it for a long time. One of the risks I felt for me was you just do it because that's what you do. That's what you've always done. And I think having a really clean break completely was good for me to say, if I do go back, it's a real choice. I'm generally choosing to go back because I want to do it, not because, well, that's what I'm doing. I've always done it. So I did. And I thought in the time I took off to finish my PhD and do some other things, I thought if something else draws me in, if something else attracts me or excites me in life, then I'm very happy to say, I've got everything and more I wanted for my rowing career, and now I'm done. And I think a lot of things did interest me in that time, and I did spend time trying other things. But I always did the sense of, but of all the things I could do right now, I'd rather be back in a boat and seeing if it was possible. And I took a longer time off than probably I planned or that was ideal. But the draw was huge. So I talked to my coach and the performance director and team manager to sort of say, like, I'm still thinking. And they were brilliant in saying, look, if you're coming back for a nice sort of jolly swan song of enjoyment, it's not what we need. We need people who are competitive, driven,
Good
still
for
willing
them.
to achieve. And I thought, yeah, they're right. I don't want to come back just to enjoy it. I'm back. I need to be back and be good again. So I went back and did one more games.
And how was that experience?
Probably the hardest thing I've ever done.
I can imagine it's hard to follow up something like, well, I can imagine it's just hard full stop going from the gold, but then also what a long career, and again, another 4-year cycle.
Yeah. So I sort of came in halfway through the cycle. So it was a shorter run, but it's still a long time to commit to. And I think I predicted the first bit would be hard because it would be physically hard. I had to get back into that level, that shape. And you might think, I might have thought I was reasonably fit, but Olympic fit is a different level of fitness.
Of course.
So I still had my same standards. I still had my same expectations. I still had, I really set high bar for myself through my whole career, which you need to. And then suddenly I came back in, and despite being more successful than I'd ever been, because I'd now, got more medals and more titles and more whatever, I was at probably my worst because I wasn't, I was far off those numbers I'm sort of hit for myself. And there's partly an ego comes into that, and a pride, and I was, and it's very public when you're sort of, posting scores that you are disappointed with, and you think everyone else is looking to me. There's new members in the team by that point thinking, oh, she's come back, she's good, and then seeing, oh, she's not that good. There's suddenly this sense of,
Yeah,
wow.
absolutely.
So physically it was hard because and actually my coach was brilliant and very, very supportive of patience. Just this is fine. We're going to do this in stages and steps, and we need to make sure injury and all the rest doesn't happen instead. So let's get this right.
Because that's
So
the risk in those scenarios, isn't it?
yeah,
In the military, there's a term called panic fizz. And people have been
exactly.
away over Christmas, or they've had some time out, and they're like, oh no, there's a fitness test coming up, and everyone just thrashes themselves to death and end up getting injured in the process.
Exactly. Suddenly there's torn hamstrings left, right, and center because you
Yeah.
think, oh, I can do this sprint, and you think, no, you can't. So I probably needed to have good support around me just to reassure, still push me, but still reassure that it's okay. Like there's a point you can be pushed that's safe and protected, and there's a point that's just a bit crazy to go too far past. And I think you just need to have someone to help you judge that. So I thought physically it was hard, which I knew. I think the sort of emotional side was harder than I expected in just accepting that it was going to be a bit of a longer road back, and that I had to sort of adjust my expectations initially, although I still had the longer term ambitions. And then even when I was sort of back where I wanted to be physically, Anna had retired by that point. The sort of the options of the boats were very sort of fluid and changing, and I didn't sort of have that same. It's wonderful when you have sort of a very clear path, and the obstacles sort of fall away at that point because you're so clear where you want to get to and how. And that was just much murkier in the lead up to Rio. And I remember again, so the year of the games, when you're finally selected, so you get selected to be within, say, the rowing team, and then you get selected to be part of the Olympic team. And almost that Olympic selection is a huge deal. And each Olympic sport will get their day of, swimming or diving or sailing or, whatever it is. Every sport will go through, this is the selection day. And you become part of Team GB, and a big thing's made of it, and it's quite public. And in the year of 2012, because again, it was the home games, we went to different iconic venues to make these announcements. And I remember in 2012, because where we train is not far from Windsor in the southeast of England. So we actually got this beautiful photo with the backdrop of Windsor Castle, with the rowing team in front of it. And Anna and I it's like a school photo. Anna and I are right in the middle, like being a proud students, like, here we go, we're going to help lead this team forward. And then the same happened in Rio, apart from it was just being done at where we trained. So it wasn't an exciting venue, it was where we trained. It was going to be a big public announcement, and the media were all being invited. And at that point, I hadn't been selected officially. At that point, we were being delayed selected, so I was actually asked to leave the venue, so that I wouldn't
Wow.
be part of the announcement at that point. Me and Vicky, who I was in the boat with, we hadn't been officially selected. We weren't going to be in the announcement, and actually almost was seen as it wouldn't be helpful to have you on site when the media are arriving. So I went from, like, being front row of the
Yeah, of
school
course.
photo
Yeah.
to please leave the building. So
Yeah.
again, it's just, I mean,
How
everyone.
do you deal with that from a psychological perspective? How do you process that?
It's hard, first of all, and you have to face into it a little bit. I remember going to speak to, not deliberately, I went to, I think it was that day or the next day, one of the other, just one of the other places locally, and I was in the car park, and actually we did a brilliant woman, incredibly impressive, very experienced but very understated woman who was the chair of British Rowing at the time. And she happened to be in the car park at the same time. And she was like, is everything okay? And how's it going? And I was sort of saying, God, it's really hard coming to terms with kind of what's going on now and where I am and where I fit in and how I feel. And she was so good at just very, very wisely, but very calmly just saying, the biggest thing will be not to compare. Don't compare it to the lead up to London. Don't compare it to other people right now in the team. They're all on a different path. You're just on a new path, and your path will be very different for lots of reasons. Doesn't mean it needs to be any worse. So you focus on where you are, what you need to do. You almost close it in, keep a narrower focus, stop sort of looking around you, and just take it all, that step at a time. And it was really wise, because I think when it's going really well, actually sometimes the comparison is helpful, and you can, Anna and I would, in the lead up to 2012, often compete against some brilliant athletes in the team around us, and you could compare times and percentages and scores, and you get an idea of where you fit in. When it's all going wrong, actually that comparison was only going to be damaging, to be honest. So we had to sort of just bring in a much tighter focus until it was right to start doing a bit of comparison, and really just say, right now, it doesn't matter what else is going on around us or around the world or in our own team. It just matters what we're doing. And that sort of very narrow focus helped. And also one of the things that I did, which again, just more psychology helped, was the most common thing when you're counting down to the Olympic Games or a huge event is there is a countdown. We literally do 100 days to go, huge announcement, 50 days to go, huge announcement, 1 month to go, 7 days to go. And it's this sense of time's running away and suddenly it'll be here. And I flipped it, and I knew when we finally got selected, we would have 50 days till the Olympics. And I didn't want to count down, because I felt when you've sort of covered everything, like Anna and I, the countdown is helpful, because what you try and do is simplify it. So it gets very busy, and actually every day you just take away stuff that's not needed until you get to the final point of delivery, and it's very narrow and very clear. But we're in a very different place 4 years on. So rather than counting down, I just flipped it and we just started counting up. So every day we would add something more. We would be somehow better. We'd get something else that would be coming into our sort of bag of tricks. So by the time we got to 50, well, actually that's 50 days, we've got better. And this is, you could almost point to what we did every day that would give us. So it's about how you want to build the confidence. So London and Rio were completely different ways of basically trying to do the same sort of performance and attack the same problems, but just a very different mentality, because we were in very different positions.
That's incredible advice for anyone that is in a situation where perhaps it's not optimal. But I love that in terms of narrowing your focus, accepting it's going to be hard, simplification. And again, linking to what you talked about earlier, and a lot of people on the podcast have talked about in terms of controlling what you can control, and it will compound across time, right? And then you get to Rio. It all works out in the end.
It does. It does. Rio was difficult itself because we had incredible weather patterns. The rowing course was one of the most beautiful, iconic venues. It was right under Christ the Redeemer. It was absolutely stunning part of Rio. But it was very close to the ocean. So just down from Ipanema Beach. And as lovely as it was as a venue, it meant when the winds circulated around the sea and came up over the mountains, it caused chaos in the rowing lake. So suddenly, we couldn't train certain days. Some of the racing days were changed. And again, it goes back to that controlling controllables. Suddenly, everything was uncertain and shifting sands. And it always comes down to everyone's going to experience the same chaos. So how are you going to deal with it? And actually, what you can do is, if you can deal with it well, you suddenly get an advantage in a different way. So I think partly because, when your preparation had been pretty disjointed and less than perfect, suddenly when the actual moment of performance or competition is less than perfect, it was fine. It was like we weren't expecting perfection anyway. So what's this sort of chaos is fine by us. So we actually then just again kept that very narrow focus we'd got used to doing. What do we need? How do we need to perform? And I think ultimately, at the end of the day, I do love an Olympic final. I do love that moment of utter performance. And even when all odds are against us, no one thought we'd be able to perform or deliver a good result. And part of you, if you're in the right mental place, it's like, great, let's see what we can do then. No expectation, no real pressure, very much personal pressure. So I would have been disappointed walking away from my final Olympics with my worst result possible. Vicky, she'd never been on the Olympic podium, so I felt this huge responsibility. I'd been on multiple times by that point in a wonderful way. She'd never been on, and she really wanted to experience it, and she deserved to. So it was like, right, not many people would back us, not many people believe in us right now for good reason, but two of us will be in a boat in a start line. Our coach believed we could do something. Let's just go and find out. And like, we've got nothing to lose, and we had a brilliant race and got on the Olympic podium again. So it did all work out. It was worth coming back. I learned my hardest lessons, as we all do, in the sort of most challenging, difficult, sort of introspective times in those months and years leading up to that point. But when it works out, it's not just the result is satisfying, but actually the process is, even if there's points it was really difficult and I'm actually quite unhappy during it, you set back afterwards, and what you've learned about yourself is absolutely invaluable. Absolutely. When you get asked the hardest questions, whether it's physically or psychologically or emotionally, when you find those answers, they will stay with you for life. So those challenges are always worth it, because whatever happens, whatever the outcome, the one win is that you will learn more about yourself and be better for it.
Absolutely. I'll implore people listening to the podcast to, I think it's great to listen to podcasts, to read books, but it's through doing that you really internalize a lot of the messages that seem to make so much sense when you read them or hear them from people like yourselves. But you've got to get out there and do stuff and try it on, right, to really lock in the messages, so they impact how you behave and how you act in the world.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think I get asked a lot, and sports people get asked a lot, how do you build resilience? How do you get to be resilient? Because that's so important in the world we live in. And a lot of it is, do you know what? There's no simple magic answer. It's by living. It's by going out there and trying things and getting disappointment or getting knocked back, and yet coming back again and learning from it and adjusting and being better next time, and taking risks and trying things and finding out what are your strengths. One of the best things that the best athletes have is this incredible understanding of what they are very good at, what they are less good at, where their super strength really lies, and how they can bring it to either themselves or a team. And I think that some of the best advice also is not to wait. I think most of us have a natural way of, whether it's not just sport, but in jobs I've been in since, is this sense of, I don't think I'm quite ready for that yet. Or if I read a bit more or learn a bit more or listen to a few more podcasts, then I'll be ready. I'll be armed and I'll be able to do it. And actually, you think you'll never be. If you've waited till you're absolutely ready to do it, you've waited too long. You should never feel you're the finished article, or you finished. The 10 millionth podcast will be the one that will secure everything. It's go out there and try it, because only by, to your point, everyone's so different and everyone will do things in very different ways. And you can take all the best advice in the world, which is always going to be helpful, but it's still how it relates to you and how you will react and what you will bring, that you only find out by trying stuff.
Absolutely. And that, I guess the purpose of listening to people like yourself is that your story certainly does inspire, but use that inspiration to take action and just start. Whether it is just having that conversation with your friend, if you're at university now, go along in Freshers Week and try something out, because the downside is you waste an evening. The upside is you might end up going to 5 Olympics, winning a gold medal, setting some Olympic records. So there's asymmetric risk in that respect to just trying and getting out there.
Totally. And I think what have you got to lose? And most of the time the answer to that is a bit of pride. The worst thing you do, I think we're all worried about, I can make a complete fool of myself by, I don't know, applying for that job or setting up and speaking in front of these people or
No
trying a
one really
sport,
cares.
or no one remembers, no one cares. People move on. It's amazing how obviously we are the biggest people in our own lives, and but to everyone else, we're not. They'll forget and they'll move on. And actually, as you said, what if it takes you somewhere wonderful? Why not try at least? And one day, I remember speaking to an awards thing, PD James, the amazing crime writer, and she only sort of did her first book in her. She was around 40, and she'd had worked in the homes. She was in government and things before that, and had a family, and I was very busy. And then finally started writing. And I remember her being asked, what is it that finally made you write? And she said, "Well, I know at some point, at the end of my life, I could be in my deathbed, or people will ask you to reflect on your life, and I would hate to be the one saying, well, I did all this, but obviously what I really wanted to do was be an author." And we all have that sense of, but what I really want to do is, and you
Absolutely.
think, at some point that will be too late. So almost give it a go, get stuck in. And if it's not for you, you'll find something else to do. But at least you've narrowed it down or found out the thing you want to do. But at
Oh,
least get stuck
100%.
in.
One of the last things I wanted to talk to you about is your career is almost it's been perfect in terms of the transition I think we've seen in British sport, full stop, from when you compare back to, say, the Atlanta games, which are sort of famous for as a bit of a like, we didn't do too well. I think we finished below Algeria and Kazakhstan in the medals tables there. And then it started to crank and crank as the science came in. We started to leverage the expertise. We have to start to channel the ambition, talent, and blood, sweat, tears that we have in this amazing country to generate some incredible results. It's almost sort of, I think, peaked at Rio in terms of gold medals or medals tables, where we became second. And now, obviously, you've been there through that journey, and now, obviously, as chair of UK sport in your I guess newer role. I mean, we've got Paris coming up, and you're still sort of there leading from the front. I mean, how are you feeling? Should we be optimistic for Paris?
We should be, for many reasons. First of all, I think Paris will be an incredible host city. I think it's very like London in a lot of ways. In that it's an incredible historic European city. It has. I was speaking to someone recently who'd been out for a few test events in Paris, because all the venues will host practice events for the Olympics coming, and they were like, one of the biggest things is you cannot make Paris look ugly. Everything from the river to the buildings to the statues, everything, the parks, everything around Paris visually is awesome. They're using all their incredible venues to their best. So there's going to be a beautiful, very sort of central point as well. They're having an urban zone for some of the sort of cooler sports. So whether it's
Brilliant.
BMX or climbing or skateboarding or breakdancing, all that's coming together in one venue. So it will attract sort of amazing, very interactive crowds. So I think Paris as a Games will be amazing. I think the other thing is it's only an hour time zone if you're based in the UK, selfishly for us.
2 hour
So
train ride as well.
it's a really easy to get to. So it's going to be amazing. It's going to feel like on our doorstep. It will be, you're watching everything live in our time zone. So often if it's a completely different part of the world, you're waking up or going to sleep, or when other things have happened, this will feel like it's all happening right in front of you. And I think both our Olympic and Paralympic team are looking really strong across so many sports. The other thing is we do very well is sort of give public finance, public backing to more sports, a wider range of sports than most countries. So actually we'll see success across an amazing array of sports, which I think, again, it comes back to this responsibility back to the public. You want to showcase as much as you can, as many different athletes, different styles of sport, so that actually the public get that feeling of, entertainment on one hand, but also inspiration in a different way, and people can try different sports, and that access to that level and range of sports is why the games once every 4 years are so important.
And how important to UK sport is it to sort of promote, I guess, participation in sport generally in the UK, not just at the, of course, elite Olympic level?
Yeah, so UK Sport as an organisation is only allowed to sort of play in the Olympic and Paralympic level. So it's very much all the money investment goes into the high performance system. But we're all very aware that it has a responsibility beyond that. So, and our athletes are the best examples of being amazing ambassadors and role models for so many more people. So when they get onto these huge platforms and perform, then we know that has an inspirational effect across, all
We
age
saw the uptick,
ranges.
haven't we, across sports that have had this team, some of the cycling teams, rowing, this participation in those sports after success.
Yeah, I was speaking
Became,
to hockey recently, and obviously when the women won their amazing gold medal in Rio, and
that was amazing.
because
Yeah,
that, I mean, it was on such a great time for everyone. It stopped the 10 o'clock news happening, so many eyeballs on that event, and then hockey clubs around the country kind of swamped by people just coming down, going, either I want to try it for the first time, or lots of people saying, I used to play hockey and I haven't done it. I'd like to try again.
yeah,
So we know it has that moment, but it also is quite a narrow window because people move on, people get busy in life, and so I think the big thing is to all those individual sports and the clubs that work within them is to be ready. So when that sort of Olympic and Paralympic bounce comes, to be ready to have new people coming in interested and give them opportunities, and hopefully more people feel the benefit of it, because we know the brilliant benefits sports brings to people's lives. So we
of
just
course.
need to keep pushing for that.
And in terms of your career now, you're able to channel some of that intensity in your role there and that competitive nature that you of course have. But what is most important to you now, moving forward at this stage of your career?
I think so. When I left, when I finally stopped being an athlete, I'm even now struggling to use the word resign. When I stopped being an athlete, I think, and every athlete will talk about it, or most athletes, what's really hard is the where next step. It's such a hard world to walk away from, for a multitude of reasons, and also it's very sort of all encompassing. So it's not just what you do being an athlete; it's who you are and what you stand for, and your friendships and support groups, and everything sort of feeds into that one world. It's very like the military in the same sort of sense. You walk away from everything in one go. And I think what people struggle with is, where will the sense of purpose be, and where will that same sort of, I don't know, everything that sport gives you, how do you recreate
It's
that
almost
in
an
normal?
identity, isn't it?
Yes, it is exactly that. It's your identity and it's your purpose. And so when I left, that's why I'm incredibly lucky. I applied for and was successful in getting the role I'm in now, because it gave me instantly, and still continues to, so much more than I expected, in that it still gives me a sense of purpose. It does give me an identity. It gives me a credible challenge. It's a lot of problem solving every single day. It's in a world that I know and respect and love, and therefore feel quite protective of. I think sport, for all its wonderful, influential, inspirational power, it's also quite vulnerable, and it can be broken or damaged quite easily by people, whether it's drugs, cheating, or abuse within sport, or all these awful things you can read about. That anchors me, frustrates me in every way, because you feel sport at its best has an incredible positive influence in people's lives. So when that is damaged, then I'm lucky. I'm now in a position that I can do something about it, and I can help to work with people who are really working strongly in that area. So I think the job I'm in now has given me a lot of things that I would have missed as an athlete, but I actually found in a different way. And I think the hardest thing is, now when I finished in this role, because it's a time limited role, the what next will happen again. And I think, even having done this for a long period of time, I've learned more and I've developed more, and I'm more equipped to take on new things. And yet the sense of loss will be immense. The sense of where next will be as much as it was before. And yeah, just wanting to make good decisions, as we all go through, will happen again. So I love it while I'm in it, but I know when I finish it, I'll still have this slight worry about, because I just think, life goes very quickly. Life feels very valuable. You want to make good choices. So
Of course.
that's all ahead of me.
Exciting. I just wanted to ask you one more question
Mm.
before we finish off with some quick fire ones. And that is, I know a lot of people that listen to this podcast are really into training and they enjoy the concept too. What, and we're talking 500 meters max, really, maybe 1K. But what sort of times, just for some context, you at your prime coming into, say, London, what sort of times did you be hitting on a concept two?
Oh man, that's going back.
Complete fanboy
Um,
question here.
so our main testing was always over 2,000 meters. So it's a
Okay,
2K test, which is the ultimate for us, because that's the Olympic distance.
of course.
So my fastest was 6:30 on that. You can work
Okay.
out what the splits are on that.
Yeah.
I was really lucky. So in my second Olympics and in my fourth Olympics, so Kath Bishop I rode with in my second, and Anna Watkins in my fourth, and they were both at various times British record and I think world record holders over 2K, and they could go smash it up. So I had good times, but
Yeah, of course.
they took it a little level beyond.
Incredible.
But yeah, the sort of 500 meter, the 100-meter sprints, it's when you can get down into the teens. So the sub 120 is the split you want to see.
Wow.
Wow.
There you go. Anyone listening that fancies a challenge in the gym this evening or this weekend, there you go.
But be careful. Warm up, warm down. Don't do damage. Don't be inspired by me to go and damage yourself in a rowing machine.
So really silly, fun, quick fire questions to finish off with. But do you have a favourite movie?
Oh, I see. I don't like these. Are quick fire questions that I take forever with. I don't have one favourite movie. I watch lots of movies.
Is there one that jumps to mind? Or a
Well,
recent one? Anything you've seen recently that has been...
Do you know, I watched the original Karate Kid with my nephew, and one, it's very entertaining and very fun, and I used to do karate. But
what style of karate did you do out of interest?
I did Shotokan.
Shotokan, okay, cool.
But also, I actually think there's some lovely, in a little bit of a cheesy way, but lovely life lessons in the Karate Kid, which helps.
Great film. Do you have a favourite series that you've watched?
I watched, so the one thing in training camp as athletes is you watch a lot of box sets. That was like,
of course,
that was like, oh my goodness. Probably the one that I need to go back to and watch again, which is old now, is I absolutely adored The West Wing.
Oh, okay, yeah. Oh. So a few people get addicted to that.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Lawyers, actually, yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Lessons in leadership as well are just filtered all the way through. It's very idealistic, but I mean, right now, why don't you got to love a bit of idealism?
We need an idealistic release somewhere.
We do.
What about a book? Has there been a book that stood out for you?
The most influential book for me was To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee, which I read at school, and I have gone back to since. And it's a legal drama, so it's got a very powerful thread through it of injustice and unfairness, and I read it it still has a frustration about it. It doesn't all have a happy ending, but the sense of injustice that drove probably my desire to study law, because there's some very good legal scenes and courtroom scenes, and the role of law in people's lives, and when it's used for good or for ill, and it's all it's very about the racial divided South America. So it's very strong, but it was really it's the way it's written is from a child's point of view. So you see these huge social issues being seen from quite an innocent viewpoint, and it's really powerful. And I've seen it on stage as well. It's very good dramatization, but I've read it again recently, because sometimes you think, God, that was so many years ago, would I still feel the same? And there's a lot in it that's worth reading.
Excellent. Have you got a favourite athlete of all time?
Well, see, I don't think I can say this as chair UK sport. I'd just be biased, right? What I love is, choose one of your rowing partners. I probably love, so many amazing athletes who've just done incredible things, but I also love that athletes have not just been brilliant athletes, but have done something with their, so I remember a meeting when I get to go to some nice events where you get to see some of the legends of the past, and I met Billie Jean King, and you think, wow, for someone who was not just a phenomenal athlete, but actually used that athletic prowess to actually make changes, really changed for women's tennis, transformed what people thought of it and how it should be regarded and recognized, was incredible. Serena Williams, someone else who's just on the scale of that, does amazing things. But Muhammad Ali, just for the history and the storyline. There's just, I could just go and list about 1,000. But I think a lot of them, which I think we see increasingly now, athletes who do amazing things, they don't all need to do this, but if they want to, also use that platform to make some positive change. I think that's really inspiring. One I would say was, if I can't say more, Beryl Burton, who is a cyclist, a British cyclist that not many people will know about. But if you look into her, her story is, she was basically an incredible cyclist in Britain who held a lot of the records, especially over in men's events as well. It was absolutely phenomenal as a female cyclist, but probably didn't get the recognition because she was
incredible.
A female
I have to check her out. Yeah,
she's great. She's great, and she's one of those people who just a great attitude of, just no nonsense, get on with life, take it on.
Excellent. What about team? Has there been a greatest team of all time in terms of sport that you've watched, admired, or?
I've got to see loads of good teams. I mean, I don't know, one of those, when you watch an individual team, it's going way back now. You know, the original, I think it was in the 92 in the Barcelona games, the dream team, the basketball
Yeah.
team genuinely had like, I mean, if you look now, the lineup, and even now, what's that now?
It
30 years
feels like a
on.
movie version of
It
putting a
is.
team
It
together, doesn't
is. It's like the Cool Runnings version of the top
it?
basketball. And actually, the fact that they could bring together such incredible superstars and yet still play together, because it's not always going to guarantee you bring the best of the best and they can actually play together.
That's true.
That's pretty up there. As an ongoing team, I actually really admire the All Blacks, and not necessarily any specific team, but the All Black rugby ethos. And having spent time in New Zealand, and it's just, you know, the ethos that sits behind why it matters and how it matters, and the link they have to the history of that country, and it's not just, you know, what you do on a field, it's how you behave and all that. I think
It's again part of their
love
identity,
that.
isn't it?
Exactly
It
that. I
flows
think,
through them.
yeah, and that responsibility, and you know, they were the first ones that really talked about when you get that black jersey, when you're given it, it's only yours on loan, and the most important
Yeah.
thing is, you know, when you get given it, it's the most, you know, amazing moment in your life. But when you give it back, it needs to have been better for the time that you spent in it. So in some way, you have given to that team and you have made it better and you have added something. Otherwise, what was the point in you wearing it? So I think that,
It's a beautiful
again,
way
it's,
to look at any form of contribution, really, isn't it?
yeah, any role, any job we have, it should be better for the time we spent doing it. Otherwise, why did
Yeah.
we do it?
Last one. If you could have coffee or a drink with any historical figure, is there anyone that jumps out for you?
Again, I want like a coffee in the morning with a few seconds.
That's
I'd
fine. We
love
can do that.
I'd love to. I mean, I think because he'd be fun as well. I'd love to speak to Nelson Mandela, because I think what he did in sport was iconic, with the
Yeah.
rugby, but I think also what he did for a nation was incredible. And having spent again some time in South Africa, I mean, to have gone what he went through and then still have this incredible forgiveness and ability to bring people together, I'd love to speak to him. Similar reasons, very different, obviously. Someone like Abraham Lincoln, I think, would be amazing, because what he took on in sort of abolishing slavery, but coming from a very split country and having to bring people together. I think just chatting to those two about how you bring very divided worlds and try and, you know, bring a better future. I think incredible. They're different viewpoints. But then I've got to balance this out. So I think I would also bring back Queen Elizabeth I and Mary Queen of Scots,
Oh, wow.
because
Yeah.
those two, I would love to sit with them both and say what really happened, because you know, there's so much
Yeah.
history written, and also actually, Mary Stuart is one of my favorite theatrical productions. The theatre production of Mary Stuart is incredible, and it's written about the meeting of the two of them, which they think in history never actually happened. But if they had, you know, what the conversations would have had, you know, two very different leaders of different countries actually in conflict and with each other, and yet very rare to have two female leaders at that point. So had so much in common. We're actually family, and yet, you know, ultimately led to each other's downfall, really. And so having those two together, I'd just be like, what really happened? What really happened? What was
That'd
it
be a
really
brilliant
like?
one.
Would that be a
Yeah.
good
It's just so
conversation?
much distorted with all the different movies and things around it.
Exactly.
It's yeah. No,
I think like all these people in history, you go, what was it really like? What really happened?
yeah. Maybe one day we'll get that time machine sorted.
Would that be
Elon,
good?
Elon. I'm sure he'll sort it once he's got space.
Where would you go first?
I don't know. I'll go back to university, to be honest. I'll take some time there for 4 years. That'd do me. I'm a simple man. No,
I'd love to
I'm
go
excited about
back.
the future.
I'd love to go back, and I'd sit in the front row of an Elvis concert.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that'd be a
Wouldn't
good
that
one.
be cool?
Yeah. I wouldn't mind a front row seat at the Coliseum, though. See something like that.
What, Gladiator for real?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe one day.
There's some good places to go, actually. Or maybe Back to the Future should be the favorite film. It could go everywhere. So what are you
Yeah.
excited about the future then?
I am most excited about, oh, What am I most excited about? I'm excited. I'm looking forward to the Olympics. This
Good.
so I'm going to try and spend some time in Paris. I'm looking forward to some of the athletes I'm working with personally over the next 3 to 6 months within a variety of sports,
Nice.
competing and seeing the seeds that have been planted over the last year, 2 years coming to fruition.
Oh,
And
amazing.
seeing some of the tipping points with different organizations I'm working with. That for me is the most exciting thing.
Yeah.
It's applying the principles, trying to put those conditions, put people under those conditions that we know can accelerate progress, and then watching it hit's just a beautiful thing. It's a
Incredible,
bit
isn't
like
it?
a gardener. That's something
Yeah.
about it. It's like,
Yeah.
and I'm looking forward to spring, and I
Yeah.
feel like spring's coming.
And are you seeing the green shoots now? Are you
Yes,
seeing? Yeah,
yeah,
nice.
certainly, yeah. But Catherine, thank you so much for taking the
Oh,
time out of
thank
your busy
you.
schedule to speak to us. It's been incredible, and we're so lucky to have been able to watch you entertain us and represent Great Britain in sport and continue in the role you're in now. We're so lucky to have you in that role. So thank you so much.
Well, I feel very lucky to have led the life I've lived so far. So I'm glad other people have enjoyed it too. But thank you for chatting about it.
Thank you for choosing to spend your time with us today. I love this topic of human performance and excellence, and I've been engaged in it neurotically for the last 20 years. It's a sincere privilege to have the opportunity to share my knowledge, network, and learnings with you. Now, go and put the principles to work. Make sure you let us know what resonates. Reach out with questions, blind spots. We've got you covered. Remember, excellence is just a series of days repeated over and over again. Now go and win your day. In 2021, I published my first book, Accelerating Excellence. If you're finding the conversations and information on this podcast useful, you might want a physical reference point and to gain even deeper awareness of the concepts discussed. The book's actually more of an operation manual containing more detail with a step-by-step guide on how to implement all this stuff so you can get maximum benefit, which was one of my main motivations in writing it. Yes, I want the podcast and the book to be inspiring and entertaining, but it was non-negotiable for me to make sure that the listener or reader is provided with a structure and direction in terms of actually putting this stuff to work. The book's called Accelerating Excellence. It's a #1 international bestseller. And if you're moving from more than just interest towards implementation, I think you'll really enjoy it. Like everything I do, the book is evidence-based, but practice-led, drawing on my experience working with some of the world's most elite, exclusive, high-performing teams and individuals. It's filled with highly actionable strategies you can apply today to become better tomorrow. If this sounds like something from you, see the link in description where you can download 6 chapters of the book for free in either audio or digital format. It's also available to purchase on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and at your local bookstore. I hope you enjoy. By now, we all know the importance of a winning mindset. We're bombarded with elite performers telling us that mindset's what separates the best from the rest. That if we want to be successful, we need to be more confident, resilient, and motivated. And of course, when panic strikes, we need to calm down, relax, or chill out. Great, we get it. But the question is how? We're given this guidance with almost zero practical advice in terms of how to achieve it. Where can we actually go to develop that world-class mindset? What's the back squat for resilience, the bench press for confidence, and the bicep curl for positive thinking? Well, that's why I created the Mindset app. Through the app, you'll gain access to the psychological skills training used by world champion athletes, special forces operators, and some of the world's most successful traders and investors. The reality is these guys pay me a fortune to help them get this right. But the thing is, these skills are equally, if not more important for the aspiring athlete, executive, or operator. And that's exactly why I created this app. I want these tools and training available to anyone, anywhere, anytime. Mindset is a skill, and like any skill, it can be developed with the right strategy and effort. The tools and techniques are designed in a way that will literally rewire your brain, like learning to ride a bike or drive a car. All the techniques are designed with creating a high-performing, self-regulating you 2.0. Every strategy in the Mindset app is backed by empirical research. There's 10-minute emotional control training exercises that have been shown to increase your ability to overcome detrimental decision-making biases by up to 80%. In another study, just 3 weeks of executing visualization training led to 34% improvements in performance. Another research group found 50% greater improvements in the rate of learning. And just a few weeks of performing visualization led to 22% reductions in anxiety and 21% increases in confidence. These numbers are phenomenal, and I've never met an elite performer in any domain that can afford to be missing out on this type of edge. What I love most is that we've structured everything so that you don't need to carve out an extra hour in your day to get this done. Small bite-sized chunks of 5 to 10 minutes are all it takes. In fact, I'd only encourage you to use the tool on your commute, in the sauna, at the end of your working day, or bolt it onto the end of your gym session. Any dead time you have can now immediately be transformed to deliver you extreme performance gains. My goal is to remove every possible obstacle to your development. And with that in mind, the basic package is completely free. Visit the link in description and sign up for our pre-launch free emotional control, visualization, and performance routine programs. I really hope you enjoy.